Alright, let's look at this. That's off, that's off, that's off, that's on. The stream appears to be live. Alright, let's do this then. Hello, Shadowcat back with more Babylon 5. Yes, I've been waiting for this one all week because last week went completely off the rails. I was not ready for that, but we did the best we could. In all fairness, though, it wasn't my fault. The Centauri changed the rules. Okay? The Centauri changed the rules, and then I had to do something about it, so it's not my fault. Okay? I'll die on this hill that it's not my fault. Anyway, we're going to get into it. We're going to do this because I think I've got something figured out now. We'll cover what we did last time because what we did last time wasn't much, but it was a lot of there's a lot of just figuring stuff out. So, before we get into that, of course, if you're here and you haven't subscribed yet, do that now. Hit the bell icon while you're there. That way you get notified every time these videos come out. If you know somebody else who's also into Babylon 5 or Starfinder, go ahead and share this video with them. Otherwise, though, if you like what I'm doing, go ahead and leave a like on the video. You can leave a comment down below. However, if you're going to leave a comment down below, might I suggest you take one more step and go ahead and join the Discord. There's a Discord link down there. It do work. And if it don't work, like, message me somehow and I will figure out a way to make it work because we play games there. So I have a whole bunch of modules for Pathfinder and Starfinder to play, not to mention I can run vanilla games as well. And as soon as I have enough players for one game, we do that. So if you want to play with us, go ahead and join the server, go to the behind the screen channel, let me know what game you want to play, what your availability is, and as soon as we can do that, we will. Now, for what it's worth, we currently have a Star Trek game running. Now, that game is nearing the end. However, we're not sure what we're going to do once we finish up the campaign. We could keep going, or we could play something else. We don't know. But if you're into Star Trek, you can join us in that one. We're also currently in the process of setting up a Warhammer 40k game. That does not have a current time slot yet. So, still working on it. If you want to join a 40k game, though, absolutely let us know, join the Discord, and you can play Warhammer 40k with us. Not the miniatures, an actual free-form role-playing game. So, if that interests you, come join us, come play with us, and we're going to get into this. I see that Blizz is in the chat first thing this morning. Hello, Blizz. Good to see you. I don't know why I'm waving. You can't see me waving, but I did. Okay? Just know that I waved. We'll go ahead and we'll bring in the things that we need. We, of course, need our spreadsheets. We need our browser. I did those backwards. It's okay, though. We got everything we need regardless. Now, going over what we did last time. Last time we were here, everything went off the rails. See, here's the thing. If we go back through a lot of the starships that we've built and take a look at them, if we look at our Earth Force ships, a lot of things will stand out. First off, every race has fighters, and every fighter is basically the same thing. Actually, that's the only way that humanity really stands out, is that humanity has the Aurora Star Fury, which is your typical interceptor, and then they have the Thunderbolt, which is considered an actual fighter. Humans are the only people who thought to make a fighter large enough to put 2 people in it. I guess sometimes we just do things better. However, if we get into the actual capital ships, we have the Olympus class. It is a large destroyer, and it does not have any hangars on it. I thought we put hangars on it. Maybe I didn't. Doesn't matter. Anyway, Hyperion. It is a cruiser, and we put hangars on it. because it has a wing of like 12 Star Furies. The Nova class, it has hangars. The Omega class, it has hangars. The Warlock has hangars. The Victory has hangars. Because every single one of these ships carries with it a complement of interceptors that it uses to project its power. When we went to the Minbari, they only have like the 2 ships, the Nile class interceptor and the Charlin. And the Charlin has 2 hangars. I don't remember if it said how many ships it had. I didn't put them on here. I should have, though. But the point is that it's got them. When we did the Narn vessels, which, by the way, once I get back to the changes that I had to make, the Thanor and Taloth class, yeah, they're going back to normal. Same for the Jaquan. They can go back to being destroyers and they go back to being cruisers. I mean, I don't feel bad about having remade them, but we did. Point being, they both have hangars. They all have hangars. They carry with them fighters. These Centauri are the only ones who don't put hangars on their ships. For reasons that I cannot explain. They just don't. And so that it absolutely threw me for a loop, because apparently the Centauri just have an entirely different doctrine when it comes to how they manage their navy. So, that forced me to kind of recontextualize everything. So they don't have hangars, they're not carriers, that's fine. Then we found out that the Vorchan, which is, these guys right here. Go away. Get all your pop-ups off here. These guys right here, apparently these are atmospheric capable. And that forced me into a really difficult position because per the rules of Starfinder, only ships that are large or smaller are capable of transiting an atmosphere. Which means that these things, they gotta be large. Either that or I have to break some serious rules, and I'm already bending rules in several places. So if I'm bending rules already, it's not good. You shouldn't. Actually, I was gonna say you shouldn't bend rules. I'm gonna back that up a little bit. It's okay to bend rules sometimes. This is the advantage of tabletop games. You are able to bend rules. But you can only bend them so much before they just break things. And so if I were to make or adjust the rule that, any ship can transit an atmosphere, well, that's just not going to work out well for anybody because it's going to upset the balance of things. So, I needed to make these guys smaller, which meant that I had to make the White Star equally smaller because if I turn these into a large frame destroyer, that would put it on par with the White Star, and the White Star is supposed to be small. That's the point of it. It is a small ship that surprises everyone. It's too small to fight capital ships, but it does. It's too small to have a jump engine, but it does. It's small. So, we reduced the White Star in size again, and we'll take a quick look at that. So, on the left we have the original White Star, on the right we have the new White Star. On the left, it is a large destroyer. On the right, it is a medium transport. And I went with a transport because it is the largest medium frame that I have. Otherwise, pretty much everything stayed the same, with one exception, and that being the vital statistics. So the weapons are the same. And the weapons being the same actually works out pretty well. If we look over here at refitting, it says that by spending 5 build points, heavy weapons will be mounted on these. Here we go. So tiny and small starships can only have 2 weapon mounts per arc. Medium and large can have 3 mounts per arc. So that means that a medium-sized ship is capable of having a total of 15 weapons on it. That's 3 for each side, and then 3 on the turret. They are not capable of mounting capital weapons, though, normally, and this is when I talked about bending the rules. With the White Star, if we look at the fact that we have a capital weapon on here, that being the Quantum Discharge Beam, I sacrificed, depending on how you want to look at it, 2 heavy weapons or 4 light weapons to put 1 capital on there. So the heavy neutron cannon it works, okay? It's rules as written. The light weapon, naturally, also rules as written. The capital weapon is the only exception here, and I paid for it. So, the only thing that really changes is the HP and the critical threshold, which both dropped by about half. This means that the White Star is even more glassy than it was before. There were some concerns that making it into a medium-sized ship was going to make it too glassy. My counter to that is that it still has 85 hit points. 85 hit points is not going to get one-shot by pretty much anything but the absolute largest guns in the game. Which means that, yes, the White Star is going to be in a position where you really don't want to get hit with anything. But if there was any ship in the series that had the ability to get in, do its job, and get out without being hit, it was the White Star. And this is where I need to talk about the actual pilot on the ship. See, every ship is going to have the following roles, and I'll make some space over here. So every ship has, right here actually, pilot, gunner, engineer, science officer, captain, and chief mate. Now, what do these do? The pilot should be obvious. The pilot is the one who controls the vessel and where it goes. Combat is broken up into several phases. There's the engineering phase, the helm phase, and the gunnery phase. During the engineering phase, the engineer, science officer, captain, and chief mate take all their actions, because these actions will have effects that go on to change how that round plays out. For example, if the engineer decides to divert power into the engines, then the pilot, during the helm phase, can get another 2 hexes of movement. If the science officer decides to lock weapons on a target, that changes the critical threshold for the gunner, and so on and so forth. So, when we're looking at what these roles actually do, and we look at the White Star and say, well, the White Star only has a 14 armor class and a 15 target lock, that sounds awful. Let me scroll this up a little bit, actually. Yeah, 14 armor class and 15 target lock. Well, that does not include the piloting bonus from the pilot. So, this new White Star is a Tier 7 ship. So let's say that we have a Level 7 pilot. When you calculate the AC for these vessels, you get to add in, it's basically just a 10 plus whatever the frame bonus for the ship is, the thruster bonus, those all go into the piloting bonus anyway, so the piloting bonus for the ship. Then you get to add in armor, defensive countermeasures, etc., etc. So if we had a level 7 on here, since you can't have more ranks than your level, let's assume that they have 7 ranks of piloting, which means that this armor class right here goes up to a 21, and the target lock goes up to a 22. That alone right there should make anybody feel a lot better about the White Star going into combat, because a 21 or 22 AC is nothing to scoff at. Now granted, of course, this is going to be opposed by the other ship, and so if they have equally competent gunners, well, you're just back to normal then. But this isn't bad, and if the pilot and the gunner do negate each other, you still have a White Star here with a decent enough AC that you're only looking at like a 25% chance to hit on any given shot. Remember, you got to roll, you have to match this number or exceed it. So if your bonuses cancel out and you're just rolling raw dice, there you go. So I feel good about it, and this actually frees me up a little bit for us to start working on these Centauri vessels, because now that we've done this, we can go ahead and look at what these ships are and what they do. For example, all of this can now go away. I'm just going to delete all of it, because this ship is no longer going to be a huge cruiser. And the Primus, we'll get to the Primus when we can, honestly, because I don't even know at this point. So, working on the Vorchan. Not the 4chan, the Vorchan, okay? Different. This is going to be a large frame, and it's going to be a destroyer, and I have to do that just to keep this thing atmospheric. It's the only way that I can do it. So, coming down here to the destroyer stats, let's build ourselves another destroyer. And interestingly, this will put the Vorchan right on par with the Narn, Thenor, and Taloth class. Now, does that mean that it's going to be better? Worse? I don't know. We'll have to wait until it's actually done. So, large destroyer. The maneuverability for it is average, which is great. There's no bonus on that one, but there's no penalty on that one either. And the turn rate is then going to be 2. Thruster speed we'll get into later. Armor class is going to be a base 10. Same for target lock. Damage threshold, they don't get that until they're huge. Critical threshold, however, is a nice and solid 30. Max hit points is going to be 150. And if we come down here, the expansion space will be 4, not 6. Which is fine. I don't know what I'm doing with 4 anyway. Now, everything over here, this all needs to change. So, no fill. Let's look at what we can do with this ship. So, the destroyer has 2 forward heavy. We'll paint those green. It's going to be heavy, heavy. Both port and starboard are light mounts. So we'll paint that green. That's light. Do the same for starboard. I believe it's the same for aft, right? Yes, aft has 1. And then the turret is light as well. So that is the default setup for the destroyer. Now, of course, naturally, we do have additional space. Let me go ahead and color code this too. Just as a reminder, because that's what we can fill in. The green is just what comes default. So that will work out pretty well. Yeah, that's going to work out pretty well, I think. All right, let's go back and take a look at the Vorchan then and see what does it carry. Oh, also, no, I don't need to worry about that. I do need to put this down though. It costs us 30. All right, let's look at the Vorchan and see what it's got on board and what we can do. So, per the datasheet, because the datasheet has the best amount of information, this just tells us that it has 2 twin plasma accelerators and it has missiles and mines. Okay, that's fine. We can work with that. This, however, says it has 2 ion cannons. It has 16 twin particle arrays, 12 missile pulse cannons, and energy mines. Now, interestingly, if we take a look at the ship, this one appears to be currently firing. Although it's not exactly a great picture of it. And I don't really have any pictures of it firing otherwise. The cannons on it appear to be linked. Now, that can mean one of two things. Number one, it can mean that a vessel, or any one of these vessels, has 2 cannons and they are just firing, or they're 2 barrels of the same cannon. Okay, that's what I'm saying. 2 barrels of the same cannon. And that's fine. However, one thing that we could do, and I wonder where the rule is. Where is the rule at, I wonder? Building starships. Weapons? Might be into weapons. Full rules and starship weapons. Here we go. Linking weapons. So, if you install 2 of the same direct fire weapons in the same firing arc, you can link them together so they fire as one. In Warhammer, this would literally be called twin linked. And the idea is very simple. 1 roll, 2 guns. It's a bit of a risk-reward system, because if you hit your 1 roll, you've doubled your damage. If you miss it, you've killed yourself on this turn. PC is in. Hello, PC. Good to see you. What we could do is we could, to make this ship special, we can give it the forward plasma cannons. Because the destroyer, of course, as we were just showing, the destroyer does have 2 forward heavy points. Or hard points, rather. If we put 2 plasma cannons there and then we linked them, that would make this ship incredibly dangerous in a very different way from any other vessel. Yes, the Earth Force ships are absolutely bristling with cannons. Yes, the Membari have just capital weapons and beams that can slice through everything. And Narn ships were poured, not built. By linking the weapons, we could make these things punch much harder with the same weapons than other ships typically would. Which would kind of justify the whole wolf pack tactics that they use. They come in, they open fire with everything with a single roll, a single volley, blow the hell out of whatever's in front of them, and then just leave. Which is exactly what we see the Centauri do in the series. I can talk. I think that's what we're going to do. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Let's start building then. So, for starters, 2 ion cannons. So this says ion cannons. This says twin plasma accelerators. Since I don't have any kind of ion weapon in Starfinder, I'm going to have to go with what the wiki says and call them plasma weapons. Twin plasma accelerators. I'm going to twin them by linking them. And accelerator, sure, every gun is an accelerator. What do you mean by that? So, that's what we'll do. We're going to go over here. We'll grab the weapons. We're just going to go with the bog standard plasma cannons. They're going to be heavy. So, heavy laser cannons, particle beams. Here we go. Heavy plasma cannons. Medium range, 5d12. So let's go ahead and come down here to our notes. What name do I want to use? I want to use the plasma accelerator or the ion cannon. I did the ions for the Sentry. I'm going to use the ion cannon. So, ion cannon is going to equal heavy... Well, no, it's not even a heavy plasma cannon. It's just a plasma cannon. So we got the note down. That means that we can come back up here and just say ion cannon. And then we'll go to the notes. So it's medium range, 5d12. Nothing special about it normally. However, they are going to be linked. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in here linked. And we'll deal with the cost for that in a moment, because it does cost something. But I'll just copy and paste that, and there we go. We have the ion cannons on the front. As far as the rest goes, because it still has a light weapon, port, starboard, and aft, as well as turrets. Well, the aft is going to be easy. Let's go to the aft real quick. Port and starboard will probably be the same, so will the turret. So I'll go ahead and use this slot right here. It says on here that it has energy mines, 1 launcher. Does not say anything more about it than that, though. So energy mine equals, and since this is going to be a light weapon, we'll scroll up to the light and we'll look at mines. Light plasma mine seems to be the right answer. That's what we did for the Narn. Seems good enough for me. So, light plasma mine. So, for the aft, energy mine. And then we'll grab the information. So, it is technically a tracking weapon, although it doesn't move. That's why it doesn't have a speed. So it does 2d12 damage. I'll go ahead and put tracking in here anyway. Tracking 2d12. Limited 5. Mine 4. Right? Yeah, mine 4. Also, I forgot to fill in the build points in PCU, so that's going to be 5 and 12. Didn't fill in for these either. That's okay, though. I can run down here and get it. Railgun, particle beam, plasma cannon, 30 and 20. Perfect. Alright, so that still leaves us with port and starboard, as well as the turret. What else do we need to put on this thing? So according to this, it has 16 twin particle arrays, and 12 missiles, and then generic pulse cannons. Well, that is awkward. So twin particle arrays, that would normally be my go-to for the port and starboard. However, that would mean putting missiles on the turret, and missiles on turrets don't make sense to me. Missiles are already omnidirectional because they're a tracking weapon. You don't need to put them on a turret. So, what do you think about us putting the missiles port and starboard and giving them just like a really good kinetic payload? And then putting a single twin particle array on the turret. I mean, that could work. It could work. It would make this ship unique in that it would be very, very missile heavy. Which is great. Missiles do terrific damage, but that also means you can run out of ammunition. Which doesn't seem like a problem for them, actually. Centauri seem like they would be arrogant enough to do that. Alright, let's do that then. Port and starboard will be missiles, and the turret will be the particle beam. And as far as, like, the pulse launcher cannon things, I'm not even dealing with those because I just don't feel like it. I don't even know if that's supposed to be there. That could just be like a typo or something they forgot to delete. I don't know. This website does not seem to be terribly well maintained. So, okay, 12 missiles. What kind of missiles? Well, we should probably make the missiles match the mines, right? And we do have light plasma torpedoes. And that should work well enough, I think. Okay, we'll do that. So we'll come down here and we'll just say missile equals light plasma torpedo. There we go. And then we'll go ahead and we'll add it up here. So missile. And we will start writing everything down. So it's going to be tracking speed 14. And it will do 3d8 damage, which is respectable. And the only thing really special about it is, or the only thing to put down here is that it is limited to 5. Go ahead and put in the numbers. So it's going to be 5 PCU, 11 build points. And then we'll just copy and paste. Perfect. So there we go. Now it's got 10 missiles on it. And PC's making fun of me. It's not my fault. Leave me alone. If anyone doesn't get the reference, go back and watch the first Star Trek movie. Okay? I gotta say, if you've never seen Star Trek the Motion Picture, it is well worth your time to watch it. However, if you are a big fan of like the original Star Trek, prepare to be surprised. And if you're a big fan of other Star Trek, prepare to be surprised. Because Star Trek the Motion Picture is unlike any other movie you have probably ever watched. And I say that because, like, Star Trek the Motion Picture, I think, really hailed back to a different era in movie making, where... How do I want to phrase this? Star Trek the Motion Picture was not made for an audience. Let me put it that way. It was not made for an audience. Star Trek the Motion Picture was made for the people who were making the movie. And I say that because it is an incredibly slow movie. Now, when I say that, a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, it sounds boring. You're not wrong, but at the same time, you are really kind of forced to appreciate the movie for what it is. It is not a movie for, like, the hardcore Star Trek fans. It's a movie for movie fans. To sit there and admire the acting, the cinematography, the model making, the effects, everything else like that. Everyone else is going to be sitting there, like, looking at their watch saying, how much longer do we have of this? But actual movie buffs are going to be like, this is awesome. So, absolutely worth your time to watch it, even if you only watch it once. Go do it. You'll enjoy it. I hope. Anyway, still got to finish this up. So, per the datasheet, it's just a twin particle array. Alright. Particle array equals. Now, there's a couple of things that we could do here, actually. But that would be stupid, so I'm not going to do it. I was going to say we could actually put an array on there. Arrays are interesting because they're capable of firing into adjacent hexes, I believe. Or no, wait. Arrays target everything. Oh, actually, no, that's not a bad idea. I was thinking of broad. Broad fires into adjacent... hex or adjacent arcs. Arcs is the word I was looking for. Which is pointless on a turret because a turret can point in every direction at once. No, an array weapon is different. This actually might fit better than I thought. So, an array weapon fires at all targets in a single firing arc. The gunner attempts a single gunnery check against each target in the firing arc, starting with those closest to the starship. Each gunnery check has a -4 penalty, which stacks with other penalties. Roll damage only once for all targets. Critical damage is determined by each target's critical threshold. The gunner cannot avoid shooting at allies in the firing arc, nor can they shoot at any target more than once. An array weapon uses 2 weapon mounts. Well, we can absolutely fit that. Okay then. So what light weapons do we have that have array? Micro missile battery, heavy laser array, galactic choir array, shadow bolt array. We don't have one. But we can make one. So we have the heavy laser array. This is a heavy weapon. However, a destroyer can mount a heavy weapon. Alright, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this. So for starters... it's going to be a heavy laser array. So for starters, this is going to become heavy. And because an array takes up 2 slots, we're going to have to take up this one too. So I'm just going to go ahead and put twin particle array right here. I wonder, can I make a big X? I've done better. Can I make it a little bit better that way? Not really. I tried. I failed, but I tried. Okay, twin particle array. So, it's going to be the heavy laser array here. It's going to be short at 64. And the property is array. Now, here's the interesting part. First off, this thing is going to cost us 15 power and 10 build points. But we need to add another weapon mount. So when we come back here to... where was it? Oh, right, refitting. By spending 4 build points, you can upgrade a mount. Don't care about that. Here we go. By spending 5 build points, you can fit any new light weapon mount in a turret. Nope. How much is it going to cost us to put a heavy? Or do we have to upgrade it? Tiny ships can have 2 weapons. Okay, so I guess we have to first install the mount. So that would be 3 build points. Then we would have to upgrade the mount from light to heavy. That's another 4, so that's going to cost us 7 build points to install the additional mount there on the turret. But that's fine. We can do that. This is not a problem. So just like that, with the addition of that additional mount right there, it occurs to me I didn't do that with the human ships, did I? Because I put extra mounts on those and I didn't pay for them. I have to go and update my numbers. I'll do that later. I will do that later. Anyway, so there we go. There's the twin particle array, which actually means that these ships are going to be really interesting. So let's think about what does this look like and how does this change how they operate. I'm going to do that, actually. That looks better. So our Centauri Vorchan is going to drop out of hyperspace, and whatever is in front of it is going to get immediately hit by these twin-linked ion cannons. So each one of these does 5d12, which means that combined, one single roll is going to hit for 10d12 damage. 10d12! That is a minimum of 10 damage, a maximum of 120. If it hits, and it should. By the by, linking weapons. What did this cost? This costs a number of build points equal to half the cost of one of the weapons rounded down. So linking is going to cost 10. And is it just paid once? I'm assuming it just gets paid once. So there we go. I'll just put that right there to note that it's been calculated. So our Vorchan is going to drop out of hyperspace, going to blow whatever is in front of it away with the ion cannons. If they try to flee, it's got missiles. If they try to ambush, it's got mines. And if anything gets close enough, like say a squadron of Star Furies, it has an array weapon, and oh my god, I never even considered that. So I put the rules in here for squadrons, because fighters tend to operate in a squadron together, but it's still considered to be individual ships. Which means that if you were to approach this vessel with a squadron of fighters, technically speaking, it gets to roll against every single one of those anyway. Oof, that is rough. Yeah, don't come at this ship with fighters. Don't do it. Oh, it also just occurred to me I need to upgrade the turret as well. Oh, and I am putting this on a turret. Wow, actually, I need to recalculate this stuff. Refitting, here we go. So, by spending 4 build points, you can upgrade anything in apt. However, by spending 6, you can upgrade it on a turret. So, that's going to be +6 for both of them. So, this is actually going to cost us 16. And that means that this is going to be 3 for the new turret, or no, 5 for a light turret, and then 6 for upgrading the turret, so this is going to be 11. That's a very expensive turret now. It's okay, though. They're the Centauri. They can afford it. Alright, I think that does it for all of the weapons. Now, the basic computer doesn't cost anything as far as I remember. Computers, basic computer, yeah, it doesn't cost anything. The basic long sensors, I think, cost 6. So, budget long. Oh, okay, budget long. Budget is the one that doesn't have any kind of bonus to it. However, budget long is still going to cost us 6. Which is fine. It's fine, we can do that. No expansion bays because I don't know what you would put on here. So let's start figuring out what we could do. Also, yes, it is jump capable. Let's figure out exactly what this is going to cost us. I'm getting text messages. We're getting a kitten today. And I don't know exactly when it's supposed to be here, but it's supposed to be here during my stream. No, I'm not leaving to go see the kitten. I'll have to wait until afterwards. So just know how much I love you being here when there's a new kitten in the house that I desperately want to go see. Oh, I forgot to give this thing thrusters. It's not going anywhere. I gotta give it thrusters first. Okay, let's give it some go. It's a large ship, so we're looking at L8 or L10. I'm gonna give it the L8s. Well, no. They use gravitic engines just like the Minbari do. I'll give it the L10s. Subject to change, however, because this thing needs to fly in formation with the Primus. So if the Primus can't keep up, well, they could slow down, actually. There's no bonus on this, and the L10s are going to be 120 and 10. Not 210. Just 10. There we go. All right, let's total it up. So, 120 power for the thrusters, 60 for the forward cannons, 555, that's 15 for the missiles and mines. The turret, which is super expensive, is going to be another 15. And that's it. That's really it, because the sensors don't take that much power. Yeah, that's it. That's 210. So PCU is going to be 210. All right, so how do we cover 210 then? What's our best option, since they don't list what kind of power plant it has. So it's up to me. I can put in whatever I want. So power cores. We're looking for something that fits a large. So the Arcus series looks like it's going to fit the large. 150? No. 200? Just shy. I believe that means it's going to have to be the Pulse Orange at 250. Which is fine. It gives us a little bit of wiggle room there. So 250. So Pulse Orange at 250. Which means that it's going to cost us 25. Just because that's how these things work. Alright, so now that we got our power core installed, let's see how or what tier this thing will be. 30 for the frame, 10 for the thrusters. 25 for the power core. Now, weapons is where it's going to get interesting. So, forward cannons is going to be 50 with the linking. Both missiles are going to be 22. The mines are going to be 12. And the twin particle array turret, because it is on a turret, because it takes up 2 slots, because of everything else, this thing is be expensive. And Blizz is leaving. Well, Blizz, it was good to have you here. Thank you for coming by. And I hope I will see you next week. So until then, take care. Okay, anyway, getting back to my turret, that's going to be 27. And then, of course, the sensors cost 6. That is 182 build points. So, 182. Where does that put us in terms of the ship's tier? If we look here, 182 is going to put us just over a tier 7. It's going to actually be a tier 8. Which I think is really good. Tier 8. It's going to cost 182,000 credits. That's base value. That, of course, can change. And as far as like the crew information, I don't know that actually it gave us any crew information, did it? It says a crew of 80. And passengers unknown. So there we go, crew of 80. Okay, so now the important part. How does this compare to the Narn? So we've got this large destroyer, and it's a Tier 8 destroyer. If we look at the Narn, the Thenor and Taloth class, both of those are also destroyers, and they're both Tier 7. Oh, one thing that I forgot to add for the Centauri vessels is that means that they get 2 HP upgrades. What is the upgrade for the destroyer? Too far. For a myth, heavy hauler, heavy freighter, destroyer. Increment is 20, and they get 2, so that's plus 40. That's 190. Alright, so perfect. They're both destroyers because they both have the same critical threshold, the same damage threshold, all that. But it does mean that because it is that 1 tier higher, it means that the Vorchan actually has 20 hit points on it. It does not have the additional armor that the Narn ships have, because the Narn rely heavily on their armor. But, and this is the important part, with the weapon systems that the Vorchan has, it doesn't need the armor, and it doesn't need to worry about the armor on the Narn vessel either. So that is super cool, I think. They are going to be very, very well balanced. Which means that now we have to start looking at the Primus. And the first thing we got to do is figure out exactly what does the Primus even do. I figure out how big it is and all that stuff. Right now it's listed as gargantuan, but if the Vorchan is really like on even footing with the Thenor and Taloth, that would imply to me that the Primus should be more in line with the Jaquan class. And then, of course, the Narn have a big carrier, but the Centauri don't. And I actually looked into that. I did. I looked into it. As it turns out, there is actually a Centauri carrier. But there's a problem with it. So, I am not the first person to make a Babylon 5 RPG. There were people that did it before me. In particular, Mongoose Publishing, Mongoose Entertainment, something like that, Mongoose, made a Babylon 5 tabletop game once upon a time. They are long since defunct, and you would be hard-pressed to even find a copy of this game anymore. But they did make it, and there is still information about it on the internet. Inside of that game, it did list a Centauri carrier. The problem here comes in that the Mongoose RPG was, or rather, it's considered non-canon. I don't know if it was even licensed or not. If it was unlicensed, it's absolutely non-canon, and if it is licensed, even the license holder was just like, no, this is not part of what we do. So technically, out there exists a Centauri carrier, but I'm not using it. I don't think we can use it. So I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. What do we know about the Primus then, and what can we do with it? So first off, let's go ahead and check the wiki. So there's our stop scrolling on me. There's the Primus battlecruiser right there. Nice picture. Very powerful warship compared to its contemporaries. The only real weakness is the lack of fighter bay facilities. That threw us for a loop last time. During the last days of the Narn Centauri War, several Primus battlecruisers were outfitted with outlawed mass drivers and were used in the planetary bombardment of Narn. The standard armament is the twin-barrel heavy pulse cannons, which allow it to deal with capital ships and fighters. Despite this, without fighter support, it can be quickly overwhelmed by intense barrages from enemy fighters and a powerful defense grid. it doesn't tell us much. It says it has a crew of 212. They call it a battle cruiser, but since every race defines what a, destroyer, cruiser, whatever is differently, not much I can do. It does say that it has 4 heavy X-ray laser cannons, 4 twin particle cannons, 4 twin light particle cannons, and 1 mass driver, optional. That says retrofit, but optional. So, what does the datasheet say? Well, capital ships, Primus-class battlecruiser. So, it does actually give us a length of 735 meters. That makes this thing small. Not small as in like the actual size category, but let's consider something. If we go back to the Earth Alliance ships, Earth Alliance capital ships and the Hyperion. So the Hyperion, and the picture's kind of cut off here. I can go ahead and get a better picture. Centauri Republic Earth Alliance, here we go. Hyperion class heavy cruiser. There we go, there's a picture of one. So, if you look at the Hyperion ship, one thing is worth noting, in that this ship is actually 50% engine. Okay, just stick with me here. So, taking a look at the ship. Obviously, this is the bow, this is the stern. These are the engines right here. And all of this scaffolding here is just frame that connects the engines to the rest of the ship. Which means that this ship is 50% engine. There's nothing back here. The only thing from here back is this box right here, which is, I believe, weapon mounts, and then, of course, the actual thrusters. The entire crew lives and works in this forward section. Now, why do I point this out? Well, because when we look at the Primus battlecruiser, I know the image is cut off up here, but it is 735 meters long. The Hyperion is a kilometer long. It's a full kilometer. Even if the ship is like 50% engine, it's a full kilometer long. The Primus battlecruiser is 735 meters long, and it has these giant these giant antennas sticking out the front. It also has a giant spine coming out the back too, for some reason. So, like, how big is this ship actually? I could knock this thing down and call this thing like only half a kilometer. Unfortunately, if I did that, that would drop it down to like also another destroyer, and I'm not making it a destroyer because it's got to be bigger than the Vorchan. It just does. So here's what I'm thinking. What if I just step it up one step? Even if the length doesn't really seem to match that much, if I take it from a large to a huge, this actually does several things for us. Number one, it keeps everything consistent, because this thing, as far as I can tell, and let's just go ahead and double check here. Additional characteristics. It underwent a major upgrade. Pulse cans are upgraded to 8 twin barrel heavy Centauri pulse cans. Okay. While slightly older than the Vorchan class, it was nevertheless a powerful warship of the Centauri fleet. It's composed entirely of Primus class, or a Centauri fleet tends to be comprised entirely of Primus class ships to make up for the lack of fighter escort. They attack in a combat box comprised of multiple staggered wedge formations. This allows their ships to concentrate firepower on targets directly in front, while simultaneously protecting one another from fighter attacks through the use of interlacing fire. In combination with the Vorchan medium-class warship, Centauri adopt the tactics reminiscent of the Earth Alliance, which employs Nova and Hyperion-class ships with Primus-class cruisers providing the support fire for the Vorchan while fighters screen the fleet and attack vulnerable targets en masse. And it does actually give us... Oh, wait, it gives us a tech sheet here. Well, now, hold on. Hold on. This says that the starship is 1,586 meters long. That is double what the data sheet said. It has a beam of a full kilometer and a draft of 455 meters. It's not exactly deep. Well, by this, it actually says that it should fit into the cruiser class better. No hangar bay, armaments, it just says 8 twin-barrel heavy Centauri pulse cannons. Well, at least we have something to give this thing a little bit more bulk. Something that I can fall back on as a canon reference. The Apocrypha... Yeah, sure. Okay, so sources regarding the size, weaponry, armament of the Primus battlecruisers vary widely, not only per the different role-playing and wargame publishers, but also between different editions. The specifications from non-canon sources follow. Babylon 5 Wars says that it was 455 meters long. The Babylon 5 role-playing game Ships of the Galaxy, that was from Mongoose, doesn't even list a size. The Babylon 5 role-playing game Centauri Republic Fleet Bank also does not list a size. Call to Arms Fleet List does not list a size. There's only so much I can do here. So... if nobody else can be consistent, I have to be consistent. I'm going to make it a cruiser. So it's going to become huge and a cruiser. And we're just going to run with that. All right. So scrolling. Here we go. I can close this. We don't need that anymore. Cruiser. Alright, it gets to keep its average maneuverability. Now, where things are going to get a little bit different, we didn't put any armor on these. The armor class continues to be 10. So does the target threshold. However, cruisers, being huge, get their first damage threshold of 5. And a critical threshold of 36. Base HP is 180. I guarantee that it won't stay that way, though. Jump capable, obviously yes. Now, interestingly, what we did last time is we actually put in the potential slots in yellow. I'm going to do that again. And since this is huge, it says huge and larger starships can have only 4 weapon mounts per turn or per arc and per turret, which means that I can fill in this entire thing in yellow. Because any or all of these can be filled. However, the default setup for a cruiser is 1 forward capital, one light port, 1 light starboard. and one. Okay, I think it's back. Let me get rid of this. All right, so yeah, that was rough. The entire computer just absolutely bombed. I thought the mouse quit at first, and then I tried to restart the mouse, and no, the entire computer was just completely locked up. I've never seen it do that before. Can anybody hear me? Can anybody see what's going on? My stream apparently seems to be live. I'll have to work on that. Let's see if I can get everything back in and see if we can pick up where we were before. So there's the browser, and there is there's the sheet. Unfortunately for me, everything that I did got wiped out. I got how much did I actually lose? Wow. So I have lost like everything that I did last week. I lost the Explorer class, or the transport frame White Star, and wow, I actually lost a lot of data there. You're supposed to autosave. You were supposed to autosave every 5 minutes. Why did you never autosave this? Okay, well, I mean, I guess we'll do what we can. And I lost my avatar too. I'm not turning that back on. Okay, well, we're still here. We'll figure it out. The nice thing about this is that actually, since this is all streamed and it's all recorded on YouTube, I can simply go back to YouTube and figure out exactly where everything was. So I can recover it that way. It's not the most optimal way to do it, but it is doable. So, I mean, it's only like a few hours of work. No big deal. Let's get back to this, and we'll still see if we can get the ship done. So Centauri, because we're not going to let this get in the way. And I wish I knew that, like, there were still people here or not. I mean, should still be here. I'm looking at it on my other screen, and I see my stream on the other screen, so it's got to be live. Which is kind of weird. I'm not exactly sure what to make of that or not. PC says, missed the beginning of that with the rest. The comp came back up. Yes, well, clearly the computer came back up. I'm here. It was rough. It was rough. And for some reason, nothing got saved. Even though this is supposed to save everything. Like, if I go to Tools, let's see, Tools, Options, Load and Save Options, General. Yeah. Save automatic recovery information every 10 minutes. Automatically save the document instead. So, yeah. Everything in LibreOffice was set to save, and it didn't, and I don't know why. But it's fine. I will rebuild it later. And PC says I have two. I have 2 streams. All right, hold on. That's not going to be good. Let me see what I can do about this. Go back to channel content. I'll refresh this even. So that says it's live. Oh, P says you have 2 computers. I actually do have 2 computers. Yes, I have 2 computers. This is true. However, one of them is just an auxiliary computer. It doesn't actually do any work. I only have the one computer that actually does any work. But okay, getting back to this. So, HP is going to be 180 as a base. The armor class is 10, target lock is 10, damage threshold is 5, critical threshold is 36. Also, cruiser is going to cost us 60. Some of the stuff I actually do remember. Jump engine, yes, obviously it has a jump engine. Now, like we were doing with the Vorchan, I'm going to paint all of this in yellow because all of these slots are available. And PC says, by that it sounds like a potential drive failure. I'd run a check disk when you can. It has M2 blades, though. It doesn't have a disk. Okay, so it has the capacity, or rather, it has the capability of mounting 4 weapons in every slot, but it doesn't come with that by default. So by default, it has 1 forward capital. So we'll just make this green. It has light, port, and starboard. And it has 1 heavy turret. And so that's what we have to build. As far as the computer goes, we're using budget sensors on these. And so this is going to be a basic computer. I'm not giving it any countermeasures by default. Sensors will be budget long. And the expansion space is going to be 6. Now again, this thing is not a carrier. It does not necessarily have a hangar. At least not for fighters in particular. It technically has a hangar inside of it because it has shuttles. And so I can still probably put a hangar in there, but it doesn't carry fighters. So yeah, we'll figure it out. By that metric, even the Vorchan should have had a hangar, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. And PC says M2s are still drives. They can still fail. What happens to you is like when my RAID 0 was losing half the array and thus failing to write. System still ran with what was in RAM for a bit till it tried to do something that required read-write, and then it went weird and then died. Yeah, well, this is the first time this has ever happened, so it's a little concerning. I can do diagnostics on it later. In fact, I will do diagnostics on it later, because it's concerning. Then again, I mean, it hasn't been reformatted in forever, so it's due. I just really don't want to reformat it. I hate reformatting. It's awful. Mostly because I have to find somewhere to stick all of my data that I need to save. And, like, I have a lot. Okay, so, anyway, getting back to this. The Primus class battlecruiser. This thing has 8 ion cannons, 4 laser cannons, 4 light pulse cannons, 2 missile launchers, and we're going to ignore the mass driver. So, ion cannons, laser cannons, pulse cannons, and missiles. 1, 2, 3, 4. The problem here is that this thing only has 4 weapon slots in general. So we're probably going to have to... add some. Now, as far as the capital weapon goes, we can make that into the ion cannons easily enough. Now, in every other instance, those were either going to be plasma or pulse, or plasma or particle. With the Vorchan, which I don't have up anymore because that didn't get saved, I believe those were plasma cannons. When it comes to capital weapons, though, we have some options. So, capital weapons. Let's take a look. We've got the particle beam cannons, as well as the persistent particle beam cannons, which are both great options. We've used them before. Super EMP, here we go. Super plasma cannon. Again, medium range, great damage. Nothing terribly special about it, though. So, I guess the question is this: do we want it to be a... Hard to tell. I'm inclined to go with the plasma cannon, though. Just because that's what we did with the Vorchan, and since they are similar, it strikes me that they would have similar armaments. I think that's what I'll do. Think that's what I'm gonna do. Alright, so we'll come down here to notes. I will format paint over here. That way I have my little boxes. And we'll get to work. So, 8 ion cannons. The ion cannon is going to equal a super plasma cannon. Super plasma cannon seems a little bit weird. Like, there's no military in the world that would call something a super, I don't think. Trying to think of something. Well, no, I guess the Air Force did call one of their jets a Super Hornet. Still sounds weird, though. Still sounds weird. Alright, so, capital weapon, this is going to be our ion cannon. And let's get the information for it. So it's going to be a medium 3d6 times 10. So we're talking minimum 30 damage, maximum 180 damage. Which, you know, respectable. So that takes care of the forward capital weapon. Now, as for the port and starboard weapons, here's where things are going to get a little bit ugly. We may have to add mounts. So, 4 battle laser cannons, 4 light pulse cannons, 2 missile launchers. So we know that we have light mounts on the sides. We know that we have a heavy turret. We also know that it is absolutely pointless to put missiles on turrets. We discussed this earlier. So, if we know that they have light mounts, what if we add a couple of light mounts on either side? Okay? We can put the light pulse cannons, which are going to be plasma, on the sides. The missile launchers, also plasma, on the sides. And then we could put the battle laser cannon on the heavy turret. I think that works. We can make it a heavy laser. Heavy lasers exist. It will not be an array, but that's okay. See, the funny thing is that a lot of this is very, very abstracted. So when I say that we're putting it on a turret, I think of a little spinny thing on top of the ship, because that's what a turret usually is. In this case, however, we could look at a turret in a different way. See, we think of a turret like a spinning battleship turret, but a turret has multiple definitions. For example, did you know that the round columns on a castle, usually at the corner, those are also called turrets? What if this ship had a turret, by that definition, is mounted on the ship, and we just have 4 lasers, one pointing in each direction. Can only fire one of them at a time. You know, power limits. That still technically qualifies as a turret. PC says, Captain, what you don't understand is that my ship has extra mounts. The mass driver then fires several Centauri on horseback. They would, too. They put their Centauri in a little spacesuit, they put a spacesuit on the horse, and then they just throw. Alright, so, that's what we're going to do, which means we're going to need to add a couple of these. There we go. Now, by default, because we are adding light mounts, these are going to cost us 3. And I forgot to fill this in for the super plasma cannon, so let me do that real quick before I forget. 45 and 35. Okay, now, getting back to the Primus. I'm going to fill some of these in, because I need to. These are going to be... I'm saving the lasers for last. Light pulse cannon. Missile. And then battle laser cannon. So there we go. That's got everything listed. Now I just gotta, go through and actually fill it in. I did get this right? New weapon mounts. 3 build points, you can fit a new light weapon. Okay, yeah, I got that right. Perfect. See, I am good at what I do. Sometimes. Alright, light plasma cannon right here. So, light plasma cannon. And let's fill this in. So, light pulse cannon, taking the stats, going to be short 2d12. And there is nothing special about it. That will cost us 10 and 12. And that'll get copied down. The missile is going to be a light plasma torpedo. That's what we've used before. It was good before. It's still good now. So, tracking 14. And it deals 3d8 damage. Limit 5. And that is going to cost us 5 and 11. So that's 5 and 11 plus 3 is 14. Perfect. So we'll copy that, paste it in there. Perfect. Saved me a lot of work. As far as the turret goes, and let me come down here to the missile real quick. Light, plasma, torpedo. The battle laser cannon is just going to be a heavy laser cannon. Could make it a heavy laser array, but we already have short covered with the plasma cannon, so heavy laser cannon being medium, I think that's better. So, heavy laser cannon. Besides, it even says cannon, not array. Makes sense. So, battle laser cannon, and we'll grab our information here. Medium 4d8. And there is nothing special about a laser cannon. It's going to cost us 10 and 15, though. That's what makes laser cannons special. They're cheap. And there we go. Budget long sensors, of course, are going to be 6, not 60, just 6. Very expensive. And that should do it, honestly. We're not giving it any armor. I think it's good to go. Since we don't have to put fighters on this thing, there's nothing else really needed. So, let's start calculating. Let's start adding some numbers. Oh, wait, no, of course, I did the same thing I did last time. I didn't give any thrusters. It's all right, I can fix it. Okay, we're looking at the H thrusters. It actually does have H10 thrusters that give no bonus. So we're going to do that. So there we go. And those are going to cost us 160 and 10. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and start totaling things up. So, 160 for the thrusters. Coming down to the weapons, 45 for the cannons. 15 each, port and starboard, so that's 30. 10 for the laser cannon. That's it. Which means 245 PCU. That's actually a really good number because I'm sure that we can find one that will be just 250. So, power cores. We're looking for one that will fit us. Something in a huge. It looks like for huges, they start off at the Nova Light at 150, the Nova Heavy at 200, and then the Nova Ultra at 300. There is no 250 option. So, we have to go with the Nova Ultra. Wouldn't have been my choice, but it's what we got. You know what? Worse things have happened. At least they've got extra power. Nobody ever complained about too much power. I mean, Palpatine did for a minute there. Of course, that was kind of his own fault. Anyway, let's total up our build points and see what we've got. So, 60 for the frame, 10 for the thrusters, 30 for the power core, armaments, 35 for the ion cannons, 12 and 14 is 26 each side. 15 for the turret. and 6 for the sensors. Is going to give us 208. All right. And where does that leave us then? So 208 is going to put us over a tier 8 into the tier 9 category. And PC says, random thought, are there any penalties for mounting something too big or going over build points? Okay, I'm going to take the second part of that first. There are no penalties necessarily for going over build points because you can't really go over build points. Now, the way that I was operating, and there's two schools of thought on this. Okay, there's two schools of thought, and stick with me on this one. The entire reason why there are ship tiers to begin with is for balance purposes. The ship tier, from a player perspective, means almost nothing. And I do say almost nothing because it does have one thing that interacts with the players severely, but I'll get to that in a moment. The ship tier is almost exclusively there for balancing purposes for GMs. And I can explain this better if I go to a different part. I'll use this page. I'm going to go to equipment and armor. Okay, armor. We'll go with some heavy armors. So when we're looking at heavy armor here, we can see that I have ceremonial plates, reinforced plates, golem forge plates, hard suits, stuff like this. This is all level 1 armor. And the reason this is all level 1 armor is because when we look at the stats, we're looking at +1, +2 energy armor class, +3, 4, 5 kinetic armor class. Okay. Compare that to then when we get to the other end at the level 20s. So a Vesk Monolith Armor level 20 gives you a +26 energy armor class and a +27 energy armor class. This sounds really, really like crazy if you're coming from another system like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, because in both of those systems, you don't have scaling armor. You just don't. Whether you're level 1 or level 20, everyone still gets the same longsword or the same, chainmail armor or whatever. Your skills improve, but your gear largely never changes. Starfinder is different in that your gear changes a lot. And yes, you do get large amounts of skills as you level up, but there is some armor that is just better. There is not one laser rifle to rule them all. There is a basic laser rifle, a better laser rifle, an advanced laser rifle, and like the archetypical perfect laser rifle. So these numbers really mean anything. If I give a level 14 armor to a player, they're allowed to use it. However, I have to then contend with the fact that I gave a level 4 character a level 14 armor that is going to severely unbalance the game. Now, my players are going to be very happy about that, because it's going to unbalance things in their favor. They would be equally unhappy if I put that kind of armor on an NPC, and then they couldn't hardly touch them. So, we try to keep everything balanced around where the players are. So if I have a group of level 4 players, which is what I currently have in my Star Trek game, I want to keep everything kinda sorta in the level 3 to 5 area. Now, I don't have to, but that's what I should lean towards. The same is true when we talk about the starships. And this is where there is technically a penalty for it, but not really. So you are not limited by this column to this column. It's actually the other way around. However many build points you put into a ship is going to determine what tier ship you are. So if you were to say you were shooting for a tier 6 ship and you're capped at 155 points, but instead you did 163, you're not penalized for that. It just means that your ship is now a tier 7. You're not penalized, you're not hurt in any way. It's fine. So then where does the penalty come in? Most of your DCs, when it comes to doing a piloting check, an engineering check, a computers check, whatever, are based off of your ship tier. And almost every single one of them, invariably, is going to be either a 5, 10, or 15 base, plus, and by the way, 5, 10, 15, there's a reason why we use those numbers. A 5 DC represents a task that any normal person should be able to do without fail, but you still could fail. I mean, it's a bit like sweeping the floor. Could you fail at sweeping the floor? Absolutely you can. Ask my mother. But, can anybody do it? Yes. Yes, you can. It's not that much of a struggle. A DC 10 is something that you either have to focus on or be trained for to do properly. There's an equal chance that you succeed or fail, and the more trained you are at it, the more consistent you are. A DC 15 is something that should only be doable by somebody who is trained in whatever that particular task is. For example, a DC 15 lock. Well, if you know how to pick locks, a DC 15 lock is challenging for you, but honestly, it's something that you're probably going to get through. I have no idea how to pick locks. I've tried, I am terrible at it, so I don't do it. A DC 15 lock would be pretty much impossible for me to get through. So that's how we establish the base DCs for these things. Now, let me get back to the ship tiers. 5, 10, 15 base, and then the difficulty goes up with the ship tier, because it's always plus 1.5 times the ship tier. Rounded down, of course. So, if you were building a tier 6 ship, the DC for, say, a difficult piloting check would be 15 plus 1.5 times 6. Well, 1.5 times 6 is 9, and so that would be 15 times 9, which is going to be a DC 24. That is a very difficult check. Okay? It's a very difficult check. But now, you've upgraded your ship, and it's a tier 7. Well, 1.5 times 7 is going to be 7 plus 3.5. We're going to round down. And so that's going to be a 15 plus 10, which means that your DC just went up to 25. And so the higher your tier goes, the higher the tier goes, the more difficult your ship begins to control. I mean, consider the following. Let's go to the extreme example and go with a tier 20 vessel. Since we know that it's always going to be plus the 1.5 times the tier, we know that it's always going to be a plus 30. So a 5 DC, which should be very simple, becomes a DC 35. A DC 10 becomes a DC 40, a DC 15 becomes a DC 45. That is impossible for most crews. In fact, I would say that is impossible for all but the most elite crews. You would need to be level 20 to have a chance of controlling this ship. And this is where the ship tiers come in from a GM perspective. I do not want to give my players a ship they cannot control. And this is not something that is opaque. My players can see the DC that they have to roll to do things like engineering checks or pilot maneuvers. They do not want to increase that any further than they can handle either. And so it becomes a balancing act. How high are your skills and how much risk are you willing to take on? They could potentially take on a ship that is far higher than they are, but they also might not be able to use it. Because a DC, say 25 sounds awful, and it is, but if it's your piloting maneuvers, you can just say, okay, fine, I'll just lay off the piloting maneuvers for a while until I get better. But that also applies to everything else. Let's say you're in combat and your ship takes critical damage. Well, the patch action for the engineer is also going to be 10 plus 1.5 times the 1.5 times the ship tier. So if your patch DC is also a 25, maybe you can't patch that, which means that your ship systems are going to suffer for it. Do not bite off more than you can chew. So that's where the penalties come in for going over your build points. You can't go over them, but you can make your life a lot more difficult than it was. Now, as far as mounting something too big, this is a more complicated and yet also easier question because the answer is simply no. Because you're not allowed to. The rules are actually very clear. It says that heavy weapons can only be mounted on medium or larger starships, capital weapons can only be mounted on huge or larger starships, and cannot be mounted on turrets. Period. Right there, literally in black and white. You cannot do it. But, and I hear you possibly asking, what about the White Star? The White Star is a medium-sized ship and it has a capital weapon on it. Yes, it does. And that is because I bent the rule. Actually, I straight up broke the rule right there. But I'm going to say that I bent the rule because I did not go over the total weapons. Technically speaking, the maximum that the White Star as a transport, which I also have to rebuild, could mount would be, because it's a medium-sized ship, it only have 3 in every facing. It could have 15 heavy weapons mounted on it. Because I did not put 15 heavy weapons on it and then added a capital weapon, I'm bending the rule by saying I'm going to lower the ceiling to raise the floor. Okay? Bending the rules, not breaking them. Could another player make the same argument if they wanted to do that on their ship? I would say absolutely they can make that. It's a consideration that I would extend. Which again is why I say bending, not breaking. But if you're asking about penalties for mounting something like that, there are no penalties in the book because the book strictly bans it. Could I put in penalties for it? Yeah, I could. If I wanted to do something like put in a penalty for maneuverability, I could do that. And if it were any other ship but the White Star, I might do that. But I'm not doing that to the White Star because it has a profile to maintain. I'm doing my best to keep everything balanced as much as I can. So, with that being said, when we go back to look at the ship tier for the Primus, at 208, that puts it ever so slightly over the tier 8, which means it's got to be a tier 9 vessel. And Tux is in. Hello, Tux. You caught me just as I was about to leave. It's okay, though. You made it all the same. Alright, so that'll put that right there. Since it is a tier 9, that does mean that we get to upgrade the HP on this cruiser twice. And let's see, what's the cruiser HP? Where is it? There it is. Okay, increments of 25, it's going to get 2 of those, which means it's going to be a plus 50, which will put this thing up to 230 HP. There we go. So that's not bad. That is not bad at all. So it's got average armor class, average target lock. Again, that's before we put the pilot in. Because if we put in a commensurate pilot, remember how we just talked about how you want to try and keep your crew level in line with the ship tier? If this ship had a level 9 pilot, that pilot gets to add their ranks in piloting to the AC and target lock, which means that even though it says 10 right here, which sounds terrible, once the pilot takes the helm, it has an armor class of target lock of 19, which is a lot better. So don't look at these base armor classes and think that, wow, that ship is a sitting duck. It's not, you know, unless it's actually just sitting there. With a damage threshold of 5, that means it gets to shave a little bit off of every shot. Light weapons are going to be, you know, pretty ineffective against it. They still can work, but they're not going to be as effective. So you'll want to hit this thing with heavy and capital weapons all the same. Critical threshold 36 means that it should be rather robust, and with 230 hit points, it should have a lot of stamina. As far as the weapons go, it's got good coverage. Nothing long range, though, except for the missiles. Since the missiles are the only long range that it has, this thing really wants to actually get close and start just trading blows. Given what we learned about the Primus and the fact that these things actually fly in box formations and cover for each other's, that actually makes a lot of sense. Because when one gets in, they all get in. Otherwise, I think it looks good. So, I have a lot of work to do now because I have to rebuild the Vorchan from the stream since the document didn't save for some reason. I can't fathom why, but maybe it only saves if it's like inactive for 10 minutes? That doesn't make sense. I don't know. Either way, I'm not happy about it. I have a lot of work to do now. But it looks good. So, with that, I will go ahead and call the Centauri done. And with the Centauri done, that means that when we get back here next week... since the Centauri were the last of the major races, we can start on the League of Non-Aligned Worlds, which should not take that long. Because while there are a lot of ships here listed in the League of Non-Aligned Worlds, there's not actually that many that we need to worry about. If I go to the data sheet and go to ships, that's all they list. Because that's kind of all that matters. There's the Avioki class cruiser for the Brakiri. There's the Sunhawk for the Drazi. There's the Serpent class fighter for the Drazi. See, they didn't even differentiate between fighters and capital ships. And then there's the Zor and Zil class cruisers for the Vree. So I hope JP is here for that one. Because, like, that's the one he's been waiting for. So, there we go. We will go ahead and do that. And PC says, weapon idea. Instead of explosive missiles that instead of explosive missiles that latch onto a ship and just fire thrusters to send the ship out of control. Okay, I think I understand what you're talking about there. It's an interesting idea. Believe it or not, that idea does not exist, but there is something that does exist that does kind of the same thing. So, last thing that I'll do before we get out of here. If we go into weapon properties, there is a weapon property called... Where is it? Torque. A torque weapon fires ammunition that spins at an incredible rate and imparts angular momentum. This is only seen on one weapon, I believe, and it's the chain cannon, or rotary cannon. In addition to dealing damage, a hit with a torque weapon rotates the target in space. The gunner can turn the ship by one facing, resolved at the beginning of the helm phase. The pilot of the target starship can attempt a piloting check to prevent this rotation. And the torque weapon special property only affects targets that are large or smaller. So, your idea of basically just a thruster dart could be done. And if you wanted to write the rules for that, I would absolutely sit down and help you do that. But that'll come, game time. Not for right now. For right now, though, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get out of here because I believe there's a new kitten in the house that I have to go see. I have to rebuild my spreadsheets because, it's bad, and I got all kinds of corruption errors as well when I had to reboot. So, got to make sure everything's okay. Otherwise, though, I suppose I will see everyone next week. Don't forget that if you are not subscribed, go ahead and do that. Hit the bell icon, that way you get notified every time these videos come out. If you know somebody else who's also into Babylon 5 or Starfinder, share this video with them. If you like me and what I'm doing, leave a like, leave a comment, all that good stuff. If you're going to leave a comment, though, go ahead and join the Discord while you're at it. Why? Because that's where we play games. Join the Discord, go to the Behind the Screen channel. Tell me what game you want to play, what modules, what your availability is, and as soon as I have a group together, we'll start playing. So, I look forward to seeing you there. I look forward to seeing you back here next time for more Babylon 5, and until then, take care.